Your house is quieter than it's ever been. There was a time when you couldn't walk through the kitchen without tripping over a backpack. When the TV was always too loud. When someone was always yelling from the other room about something they lost, a shoe, a permission slip, the TV remote. Now you'd give anything to hear that noise again. The phone doesn't ring as much as it used to. The holidays feel smaller. You scroll through old photos more than you'd like to admit. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a question sits there, heavy and unspoken. Did I do something wrong? If you've ever felt that, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not alone. This is one of the most common struggles I see in parents over 60. And after more than 40 years working as a psychologist with families just like yours, I can tell you something important. It is almost never too late. The parents who turn this around, the ones whose adult children actually start calling more, visiting more, wanting to be around more, they don't do it by accident. They do 6 specific things differently. And number 4 is the one most parents resist. But it changes everything. So stay with me. Because what I'm about to share could be the difference between another quiet Thanksgiving and a full table. Before we get into the 6 things, I want to name something that nobody likes to talk about. The world your children are living in is not the world you raised them in. They're busier. Many of them are working longer hours for less certainty. They're raising their own kids in a time that feels chaotic. They're scattered, not just across the country, but across a dozen apps, group chats, deadlines, and obligations that didn't exist when you were their age. That doesn't make it okay. And it doesn't mean your feelings don't matter. Because they do. The loneliness is real. The sense that you've been set aside, that the family you built somehow moved on without you, that is one of the most painful things a human being can feel. But here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. This is not about guilt-tripping your children into visiting. That road leads nowhere good. I've watched it destroy families. This is about something better. Something that actually works. It's about becoming the kind of home, the kind of parent your adult children are drawn to. Not out of obligation. Not out of guilt. Out of genuine desire. That shift is possible. I've seen it happen hundreds of times. And it starts with these 6 things. Thing number 1, stop making them feel guilty for living their lives. I'm going to be direct with you because I respect you too much not to be. If you are using guilt to get your children to call or visit, it is working against you. Every single time. Now, most parents don't think they're doing this. They don't see it. But their children feel it. And feelings are what drive behavior. Let me give you some examples. See if any of these sound familiar. I guess I'll just eat dinner alone again. Must be nice to be so busy you forget you have a mother. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm always fine. Or maybe it's not even words. Maybe it's the long pause on the phone. The sigh. The tone that says everything without saying anything at all. Here's what's happening inside your child's brain when they hear that. They're not thinking, oh, I should call more. They're thinking, I'm dreading this. They start to associate you, your voice, your number on their screen, the idea of visiting, with emotional weight. With a test, they're going to fail no matter what. And what do human beings do when something feels heavy and unwinnable? They avoid it. Guilt doesn't create closeness. It creates distance. Every therapist in America will tell you the same thing. So what do you do instead? You flip the script. When they do call, when they do visit, when they do send a text, you respond with warmth. Pure, uncomplicated warmth. It was so good to hear your voice today. I really enjoyed that. Thank you for making time. That made my whole week. No contrast. No comparison to all the times they didn't call. No subtle reminder that it's been 3 weeks. Just genuine appreciation for what they gave you. I had a client once, a 71-year-old woman who hadn't seen her son in almost 2 years. She changed one thing. She stopped ending every phone call with, "I just wish you'd visit." And she started ending them with, "I love talking to you." He flew home for her birthday 4 months later. That's what happens when you remove the weight. Thing number 2. Make your home a place of rest, not obligation. I want you to think about your adult child's life for a moment. Not your version of their life, their actual daily lived experience. Many of them are exhausted. They are managing jobs that follow them home on their phones. They are raising children of their own. They are dealing with financial pressure, social pressure, marriage pressure. They are tired in ways they don't even fully understand yet. Now imagine they have a free weekend. A rare, precious, open weekend. And they're deciding how to spend it. One option is to rest. Sleep in. Watch something. Do nothing. The other option is to visit mom and dad. Here's the question that decides everything. Does visiting you feel like resting, or does it feel like another shift? Because for a lot of adult children, going home feels like work. I say this with compassion, not judgment. But it's the truth. They walk in the door, and immediately there's a schedule. There are expectations. There are conversations they're supposed to have. There are relatives they're supposed to see. There's a version of themselves they're supposed to perform. The grateful child, the successful adult, the attentive son or daughter. That's not rest. That's a second job. The parents who get this right do something radical. They make their home the easiest place in the world to be. Good food, comfortable bed, low expectations, no itinerary. Let them sleep until 11. Let them sit on the couch and scroll their phone. Let them be quiet. Let them be boring. Let them do absolutely nothing and feel no pressure about it. I know that sounds counterintuitive. You want to spend time with them. You've been waiting for this visit. You have things you want to say, places you want to go, people you want them to see. But think about it this way. Where do you go when you're exhausted and the world is too much? You go to the place that asks the least of you. Be that place. When your home becomes a recharge station instead of an obligation, they won't just visit once. They'll keep coming back. Because the world is heavy. And your home is the one place it doesn't have to be. Thing number 3. Get genuinely interested in their world. Here's something I've seen over and over in my practice, and it breaks my heart every time. A 40-year-old professional, accomplished, respected, running a team, raising a family, sits in my office and says, "My parents still talk to me like I'm 15. They don't ask about my work. Or if they do, they don't really listen. They redirect every conversation back to their own stories. They give advice I didn't ask for about problems I already solved. They compare everything to how things were in their day. And the message, whether it's intended or not, is clear. I don't see who you've become. I still see the kid you were." That is one of the deepest unmet needs in adult children. To be seen, truly seen, as a capable, whole, grown human being by the people who raised them. And meeting that need is simpler than you think. Ask about their work. Not, "How's work?" That gets a one-word answer. Try something specific. Tell me about that project you mentioned last time. What's the hardest part of what you do? What are you most proud of lately? Ask about what they enjoy, their hobbies, their favorite show, the game they play after the kids go to bed, the podcast they can't stop talking about. You don't have to love it. You don't even have to understand it. You just have to care that they care about it. And here's the hard part. You have to listen without steering, without comparing, without turning it into a lesson. Not, "Well, in my day we didn't have that luxury." Not, "You think that's hard? Let me tell you about hard." Just listening. Just being curious. Just saying, "Tell me more." I had a 68-year-old client who spent one afternoon learning the basics of a video game his grandson loved. He couldn't play it well. He didn't really understand it. But his adult son later told me it was the first time in years he felt like his dad actually cared about his life. One afternoon. That's all it took. When your children feel like you respect who they are now, not just who they were, they move closer. Every time. Thing number 4. Apologize for the thing you've never apologized for. All right. This is the one I told you about at the beginning. The one most parents resist. And I understand why. I truly do. What I'm about to ask you to consider is uncomfortable. It might even feel unfair. You might hear it and think, but I did my best. I worked hard. I sacrificed everything for those kids. And you probably did. But doing your best and never causing harm are not the same thing. They never have been. Not for any parent who has ever lived. Here is what I know after 40 years of sitting across from families in crisis. Almost every adult child who has pulled away from their parents is carrying something. A wound. A memory. A moment that calcified into a wall. And in most cases, the parent knows exactly what it is. Sometimes it's something big. A divorce that was handled badly. Addiction that stole years from the family. A temper that filled the house with fear. But very often, it's something that looks small from the outside. A comment at graduation. A time when they came to you crying and you told them to toughen up. Favoritism, real or perceived, between siblings. Missing a game, a recital, a moment that mattered to them more than you realized. You might be thinking, that was 20 years ago. They need to move on. But here's the thing about emotional wounds. They don't follow a calendar. They don't expire. And telling someone to get over it is one of the most damaging things you can say to a person you love. The wall stays up until someone takes the first brick out. And it almost always has to be you. Not because it's fair. Because you're the parent. And that role carries a weight and a privilege that never goes away, no matter how old everyone gets. So here's what I want you to consider. You probably know the thing. It's the thing that flashes through your mind at 2 a.m. The thing you've rationalized and explained away and wished you could undo. Name it. Pick up the phone or sit across from your child and say something like this. I've been thinking about something and I want to say it out loud. I know that when you were younger, I wasn't there for you the way you needed during, and then name it. I was wrong. I'm sorry. You deserve better than that. That's it. Don't explain. Don't defend. Don't say but. Don't follow it with, I was going through a lot at the time. All of that may be true, but it doesn't belong in this moment. This moment is about them. Only them. Now I want to be honest with you about what happens next. Because I've seen this play out hundreds of times. Sometimes your child will cry. Sometimes they'll be quiet. Sometimes they'll say, it's fine, don't worry about it, even though it clearly wasn't fine. Sometimes they'll get angry, because the apology opens a door they've been holding shut for years, and everything behind it comes rushing out. Sometimes nothing visible happens at all. They'll change the subject. They'll seem unmoved. Don't let that discourage you, because something always shifts. Not always immediately. Not always dramatically. But the door that was locked, it cracks open. And over weeks and months, the distance starts to close. I had a client, a 73-year-old father, retired military, not a man who talked about feelings. His daughter had kept him at arm's length for nearly a decade. He knew why. He had missed most of her childhood performances, recitals, school plays, choir concerts, because he was deployed or because honestly, he didn't think they mattered enough. He called her one evening and said, I should have been at every single one of your concerts. You were worth showing up for. I'm sorry I didn't. She didn't say much on that call. But 3 weeks later, she invited him to her own daughter's school play. He told me that sitting in that audience, watching his granddaughter sing, was the most important moment of his life. That's what an apology can do. Not because it erases the past, but because it tells your child, I see what I did. You mattered then, and you matter now. Please don't wait until it's too late to say it. Thing number 5, build your own life so you're not waiting by the door. I want to say this with absolute kindness, because I know it might sting. If your adult children are your entire emotional world, if their calls are the only thing you look forward to, if their visits are the only thing that gives your week meaning, if you spend most of your days waiting, then you are putting more pressure on them than any human being can comfortably hold. And they feel it. even if you never say a word. They feel it in the urgency of your voice. They feel it in the way every conversation carries the weight of being your only source of connection. They feel it in the guilt that follows every time they hang up the phone. That's not a criticism of you. It's an incredibly common consequence of retirement, empty nest, and the loss of the routines that used to structure your life. You went from being needed by everyone to being needed by no one, and that transition is brutal. Nobody prepares you for it. But here's the truth I've seen confirmed over and over in my work. Neediness repels. Fullness attracts. The parents whose adult children love visiting are almost always parents who have their own thing going on. They have friends. They have hobbies. They're volunteering. They're learning something new. They're part of a community, a church group, a walking club, a woodworking class, a gardening circle, something. When you call your child and you have something to talk about besides how much you miss them, when you have a funny story from your week, or excitement about a project, or news about a friend, something shifts in the conversation. You become interesting. You become energizing. You become someone they want to check in with, not someone they feel responsible for. There's a concept in psychology called differentiation. It means that the healthiest relationships, all relationships, including parent and child, are between two separate, whole, complete people. Not two people who are fused together. Not one person orbiting around the other. When you build a life that is full on its own, when your happiness doesn't depend entirely on a phone call from your daughter or a visit from your son, something paradoxical happens. They call more. They visit more. They want to be around you more. Because you're no longer a source of pressure. You're a source of energy. And that is magnetic. Thing number 6. Say the words. Out loud. Every time. This last one might seem like the simplest. But for many parents of this generation, it's the hardest of all. Say it. Say, I'm proud of you. Say, I love who you've become. Say, you're a wonderful parent. Say, I enjoy spending time with you. Say, you turned out better than I ever imagined. I know. Many of you were raised in homes where these words didn't exist. Your parents showed love by working hard, by putting food on the table, by staying. And that was love. It was real and it was enough for that time. But your children live in a different world. And in that world, unspoken love often feels like no love at all. I can't tell you how many 40 and 50-year-olds I've sat with who would trade every piece of practical support their parents ever gave them for one moment of hearing, I'm proud of you, and I mean it. Not at a funeral. Not in a card they find after you're gone. Now. Today. While you're both still here to feel it. I know it feels vulnerable. I know for some of you, especially the men listening to this, it feels like weakness. Like you're exposing something that should stay private. It isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing a 65-year-old man or woman can do. Because here's the reality none of us like to face. Time is not unlimited. You know this. I know this. And somewhere, in a part of them they don't like to think about, your children know it too. Every visit could be the last one. Every phone call could be the final one. And if the words were never said, I love you, I'm proud of you, you are the best thing I ever did, that silence becomes a wound that never heals. Don't leave that for them to carry. Say it now. Say it badly. Say it awkwardly. Say it while your voice cracks and you have to clear your throat and look out the window. Just say it. Because your children are not waiting for a perfect parent. They're waiting for an honest one. Let me bring it all together for you. 6 things. 1. Stop using guilt. It pushes them away even when you don't mean it to. 2. Make your home the easiest, softest place in their world to land. 3. Get curious about who they actually are today, not who they were at 16. 4. Apologize for the thing. You know the thing. 5. Build a life of your own, so your happiness isn't sitting on their shoulders. 6. Say the words. Out loud. While you still can. You're not chasing your children. You're not begging them to come back. You're doing something much more powerful. You're becoming the kind of parent they run toward. The house doesn't have to stay quiet. The table doesn't have to stay empty. But the change starts with you. Not because that's fair. Because you're the one who loves them enough to go first. If this hit home for you today, I want to hear from you. Leave me a comment and tell me which number was the hardest. Which one made you stop and think? I read every single comment, and I answer as many as I can. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Strong Elderly Life and hit that bell. We talk about the things nobody else will. The real stuff about aging with strength, with purpose, and with the people you love close by. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself, and then go make that call.